You see the 2 lines on the pregnancy test and your first thought isn't joy or fear, it's paperwork. Because you're standing in a bathroom in Tokyo, your boyfriend is Japanese, and you just realize that your child's entire legal existence depends on whether he decides to sign a single piece of paper before the baby is born. Welcome to the reality nobody warns you about when you fall in love across borders. Most foreign women in Japan have no idea how the system actually works until it's too late. You think citizenship is automatic if the father is Japanese. It's not. You think marriage solves everything. It doesn't always. You think the law protects mothers and children equally. It absolutely does not. The Japanese legal system operates on a principle that sounds simple but creates endless complications. Citizenship flows through blood, not birth location. Your baby could be born in Tokyo, raised in Tokyo, never leave Tokyo, and still not be Japanese unless specific legal requirements are met. And those requirements? They're entirely dependent on your relationship status and one person's willingness to cooperate. Here's what actually happens. If you're married to the father, your child becomes Japanese automatically at birth. The marriage is registered in his Koseki, which is Japan's family registry system, and your baby gets added to that same registry. You, the foreign mother, get mentioned in the notes. You're acknowledged, but you're not actually part of the family structure legally. You exist in the margins of your own child's documentation, but at least your child is secure. If you're not married, everything changes. Your child's Japanese citizenship depends entirely on something called Ninchi, which translates to paternity recognition. The father must voluntarily acknowledge the child, and timing is everything. If he signs the acknowledgement form while you're still pregnant, what's called fetal recognition, your baby becomes Japanese at birth. If he waits until after birth, you're looking at months or years of legal procedures to secure citizenship. And if he refuses entirely, your child might not be Japanese at all, even though their father is a Japanese citizen living in Japan. The acknowledgement process itself is deceptively simple on paper. There's a 1-page form called Taiji Ninchi Todoka that you file at your local city hall. Both parents write their names, birth dates, addresses, occupations. The father shows a photo ID with his current address, usually a driver's license. You provide your passport and a certificate proving you're not married to anyone else. The whole thing takes maybe 20 minutes if you have all the documents. But here's the part that keeps foreign mothers awake at night. Everything is at the father's discretion. Whether he acknowledges the baby is entirely up to him. Your word means nothing legally. Japan's constitution doesn't even mention DNA testing as a way to compel paternity recognition. You can't force him to sign. You can file a lawsuit later, drag him to court, present DNA evidence, and maybe eventually get a court-ordered recognition. But that's after the baby is born, after you've already missed the critical window for automatic citizenship, after you've spent months or years in legal limbo. Think about what that means practically. You find out you're pregnant, you're excited, terrified, overwhelmed, all the normal things. But you also need to have a conversation with your partner about signing legal documents before your child exists. And if your relationship is unstable, if you're not sure he's committed, if there's any chance he might disappear, you're carrying a baby whose legal status is completely uncertain. Some women discover this reality at 8 months pregnant when they start researching birth registration requirements. Others find out at the city hall when they try to register their newborn and realize the father's signature was required weeks ago. The Koseki system makes this even more complex. Every Japanese citizen has a Koseki entry. It's proof of nationality, family relationships, legal existence. Foreign nationals don't get Koseki entries. Even if you marry a Japanese citizen, you don't become part of his Koseki. Your name appears as a notation, like a footnote in someone else's story. Your children, if they're Japanese, do get full Koseki entries. So you end up in this strange position where your own children are documented as Japanese nationals in a family registry that doesn't include you as a member. You're their mother, but the system treats you as external to the family structure. This isn't just philosophical. It has real implications for everything from school enrollment to inheritance to custody rights. Now let's talk about money, because pregnancy in Japan isn't cheap. Prenatal care consists of 14 to 15 checkups throughout your pregnancy. Each visit costs between 5,000 and 8,000 yen after you use the discount coupons the city provides. Visits requiring extra tests can run 30,000 yen. That's roughly 100,000 yen total for prenatal care if everything goes normally. The birth itself costs even more. The national average for a normal delivery hit 518,000 yen in 2024. In Tokyo, it's 625,000 yen. Japan's health insurance doesn't cover normal childbirth because pregnancy isn't classified as an illness. Instead, the government provides a lump sum payment of 500,000 yen to offset costs. Notice that word, offset. Not cover. You're still paying out of pocket, especially in expensive cities. But here's something most foreign women don't know. If you're employed and enrolled in employee health insurance, you're eligible for maternity allowance. It replaces 2/3 of your average daily wage during the period you can't work due to childbirth. 6 weeks before your due date, 8 weeks after. That's 98 days of income replacement. You're also eligible for the 500,000 yen childbirth lump sum, regardless of your nationality or working status, as long as you're registered with a Japanese municipality. And if you're married or your partner acknowledges paternity, you can take up to 1 year of childcare leave while receiving 67% of your salary for the first 6 months and 50% for the remaining 6 months. These are substantial benefits. The problem is that many foreign women either don't know these benefits exist or don't know how to navigate the application process. The paperwork is in Japanese, the requirements are specific, miss a deadline, and you lose access. Your visa status also changes based on your relationship status and your child's citizenship. If you're married to a Japanese national, you can apply for a spouse visa. It allows you to work in any field without restrictions. You're eligible for health insurance, pension schemes, all social benefits. If you're not married but your child is Japanese, you can obtain resident status as the mother of a Japanese child. But the requirements are different, the process is more complicated, and your rights are more limited. Everything depends on that initial question. Did the father acknowledge paternity before birth? Because that single decision determines not just your child's citizenship, but your own legal standing in the country where you're raising that child. The system operates with brutal efficiency. It's designed for Japanese families where both parents are Japanese citizens following traditional family structures. When you introduce international relationships, unmarried parents, or any deviation from the expected pattern, the cracks become canyons. You're not dealing with a broken system. You're dealing with a system that works exactly as intended for the people it was designed to serve, and you're not one of them. Let's talk about what happens when the father won't cooperate, because that's where this system reveals its actual design. You can't force paternity acknowledgement in Japan. Not easily. The father decides whether to sign the form or not. Your word as the mother means nothing legally. DNA evidence means nothing unless a court orders it, and getting a court to order it requires filing a lawsuit, which requires time, money, and a legal understanding most foreign women don't have. The form itself is simple. 1 page. Both parents write their names, dates of birth, addresses, occupation. The father shows his driver's license. You show your passport and a certificate proving you're not married to anyone else. You submit it at the city hall where your pregnancy is registered. Takes 20 minutes if he's willing. If he's not willing, you're looking at months or years. You file a lawsuit to compel recognition. The court requires DNA testing. The father can delay by not showing up for tests. Even when the DNA proves paternity, the court must issue a judgment, which gets appealed, which gets delayed. Meanwhile, your child is born without Japanese nationality, without legal connection to their father, without access to the systems that would protect them. And here's what makes it worse. The Japanese constitution doesn't mention DNA testing as a means of establishing paternity. It's not written into the legal framework. Courts use it, but it's not guaranteed. The entire system operates on the assumption that fathers will voluntarily acknowledge their children because that's what responsible men do. When a father chooses not to, the system has no meaningful enforcement mechanism. It just shrugs. Now let's say he does acknowledge paternity. Your child becomes Japanese. You're still foreign. Your name appears in the Koseki family registry as a footnote, literally. The child is registered under the father's family name in his Koseki. Your name, date of birth, and nationality are noted for reference purposes only. You're not a member of the Koseki, you're an annotation. This matters because the Koseki is the foundational document of Japanese civic identity. It determines school enrollment, inheritance rights, custody arrangements, access to government services. Your child is inside that system. You're outside it. Even when you're the one raising the child daily, even when the father is absent, you remain legally peripheral to your own child's official existence. Child support follows the same pattern. You're technically entitled to it. The family court uses a calculation schedule based on both parents' annual incomes and the number and ages of children. If the father makes 6 million yen annually and you make 3 million, with 2 young children, the monthly support amount is 60,000 to 80,000 yen. That's the chart amount. The reality is different. Only 10 to 20% of fathers in Japan pay the correct level of child support. The enforcement system is essentially voluntary. Courts issue orders, but collection mechanisms are weak. Most agreements get negotiated down from the chart levels just to secure the father's consent to pay anything at all, which means you'll probably receive less than what the law says you're owed if you receive anything consistently, and if he stops paying, you can go back to court, file for enforcement, wait for hearings, maybe garnish wages if he's employed at a company that cooperates, maybe not. The process is slow, bureaucratic, and requires you to have the time, money, and language ability to navigate it repeatedly. Many foreign mothers just give up. It's easier to work extra hours than to fight a system designed to require the father's voluntary cooperation at every step. Custody is simpler in one sense. If you're unmarried, you automatically have sole parental authority. The father has no legal custody rights unless he formally adopts the child, which requires your consent. You make all decisions about the child's upbringing, education, medical care, everything. He can't take the child from you legally. But flip that situation. What if you're married or later marry the father and then divorce? Japan doesn't recognize joint custody. One parent gets sole custody, the other gets visitation. Courts overwhelmingly award custody to whichever parent has been the primary caregiver, which is usually the mother. But if the father fights for custody and can demonstrate he's the more stable parent, he can win. And if he wins, you lose all legal authority over your child. No shared decisions, no equal time. You become the visitor. Foreign mothers lose custody battles in Japan more often than Japanese mothers because courts factor in cultural and linguistic stability. If the father argues that the child needs to grow up fully integrated into Japanese society, and you're a foreign mother who might take the child overseas or raise them with divided cultural loyalties, the court listens. Your foreignness becomes evidence of instability. Even when you've lived in Japan for years, even when you speak Japanese fluently, even when the child has only ever known life in Japan. The medical experience compounds everything. Japanese healthcare during pregnancy is excellent by most measures. Frequent checkups, detailed monitoring, ultrasounds at nearly every visit. But pain management during labor is limited. Only about 480 facilities nationwide offer epidurals, and those that do often have restrictions, limited hours, eligibility requirements, advance booking. Many Japanese healthcare providers believe experiencing labor pain creates maternal bonding. It's culturally embedded. If you want an epidural, expect to pay an additional 100,000 to 150,000 yen on top of standard delivery costs. It's considered elective, not covered by insurance, so you're already paying out of pocket for the birth itself, and now you're paying extra for pain relief that would be standard in many other countries. Then there's the postpartum period. Japanese hospitals keep mothers and newborns for 5 to 7 days after uncomplicated vaginal deliveries. That's longer than most Western countries. You're taught baby care, breastfeeding techniques, bathing procedures. It's thorough. It's also isolating if you don't speak Japanese well, if your partner isn't involved, if you have no family support nearby. Single foreign mothers describe those hospital days as some of the loneliest of their lives. You're surrounded by Japanese mothers whose families visit constantly, whose partners stay overnight, whose mothers and mothers-in-law bring food and help with the baby. You're in a shared room watching that support system operate around you while your phone stays silent. And when you leave the hospital, you're entering a society where single motherhood carries stigma. Single mothers are the most impoverished demographic in Japan, not because the women are incapable, but because the support systems assume two-parent households, because employment discriminates against mothers who need flexibility, because fathers don't pay consistent child support, because childcare is expensive and limited. Foreign single mothers face all of that, plus language barriers, visa uncertainty, and the constant awareness that their legal status depends on maintaining their child's Japanese citizenship, which depends on decisions made by a father who may or may not remain cooperative. The child support system exists on paper but barely functions in practice. Even when courts order payments, enforcement is nearly impossible. Surveys show only 10 to 20% of fathers pay the correct amount. Most pay less than ordered or nothing at all. The family court uses a calculation chart based on both parents' incomes, number of children, and ages. If the father earns 6 million yen annually and the mother earns 3 million, with 2 young children, the monthly support should be 60,000 to 80,000 yen. But that's the chart amount. Reality involves negotiations where mothers accept less just to get anything at all. Because unlike other countries with automatic wage garnishment or government enforcement agencies, Japan's system relies almost entirely on voluntary compliance. If the father decides to stop paying, your options are limited. You can go back to court. The court can issue another order. But actually, forcing him to pay requires you to identify his assets, file additional legal motions, and bear the cost of enforcement proceedings that may or may not work. Many foreign mothers describe it as throwing good money after bad. Legal fees to chase unpaid support often exceed what you'd actually recover. Now add the visa component. If you're unmarried and the father acknowledged paternity, you can potentially get a visa as the mother nurturing a Japanese child. But that visa depends on you actively raising the child in Japan. If custody arrangements change, if the father takes a more active role, if you lose custody entirely, your visa basis weakens. You're in a country where your legal right to stay is tied to your parental role, but your parental rights themselves are vulnerable to a system that doesn't protect them the way your home country might. Some foreign mothers in this position describe feeling trapped, not by love or commitment, but by legal architecture. Leaving Japan means leaving your child or fighting an international custody battle with even worse odds. Staying means navigating a system where you have fewer rights than Japanese mothers, less cultural capital, and no family safety net. Then there's the child's nationality situation. If the father acknowledged paternity before birth, your child is Japanese. If he acknowledged after birth, the citizenship process becomes longer and more complicated. If he never acknowledges paternity, your child may not be Japanese at all. And if your own country doesn't grant citizenship by descent, or if you can't prove paternity without the father's cooperation, you could end up with a stateless child. Japan is a signatory to conventions preventing statelessness, but the process of proving your child should be Japanese without the father's cooperation is complex and not guaranteed. Children born to one Japanese and one foreign parent typically have dual citizenship until age 20 or 22, depending on when they acquired both nationalities. Then they must choose. Japan's nationality law is based on single nationality principle. The child must declare which citizenship to keep. If they choose your country's nationality, they lose Japanese nationality. If they choose Japanese nationality, they may have to renounce yours, depending on your country's laws. For children born abroad to a Japanese parent, there's an even tighter deadline. If the child acquires foreign citizenship by birth, you have 3 months from birth to submit a birth registration indicating intention to reserve Japanese nationality. Miss that deadline and your child loses Japanese nationality retroactively from birth, 3 months, while recovering from childbirth, figuring out international paperwork, possibly dealing with an uncooperative father. The deadline doesn't care about your circumstances. What happens when everything goes right? When the father acknowledges paternity, when you get proper visa status, when you access the benefits you're entitled to. Japan offers substantial support. Maternity leave is 6 weeks before birth and 8 weeks after. 14 weeks if you're expecting multiples. It's illegal for employers to dismiss you for pregnancy or maternity leave, and that protection extends to foreign workers and part-time employees. If you're enrolled in employee health insurance, you receive maternity allowance covering 2/3 of your average daily wage for the time you can't work. There's a one-time childbirth lump sum of 500,000 yen to help with delivery costs. Both parents qualify for up to 1 year of childcare leave with income replacement at 67% for the first 6 months and 50% after that. You get vouchers for 14 prenatal checkups, covering 3,000 to 7,000 yen per visit. The vouchers don't cover everything. Checkups still cost 5,000 to 8,000 yen, even with vouchers, and visits requiring extra tests can run 30,000. Ultrasounds happen at virtually every visit, which is more frequent than many Western countries. It's reassuring, but also expensive. The national average for delivery is now 518,000 yen. In Tokyo, it's 625,000. The government provides 500,000 yen, so you're covering the difference out of pocket. The Health Ministry plans to eliminate out-of-pocket costs by fiscal year 2026. But that's future policy, not current reality. These benefits exist, they're real, but accessing them requires stable employment, proper visa status, and knowledge of a system that doesn't proactively inform you of your rights. Many foreign mothers don't learn about vouchers until they've already paid full price for multiple checkups. They don't know about maternity allowance until after their leave period. The information exists in municipal offices and on government websites, but navigating Japanese bureaucracy while pregnant and possibly dealing with an unstable relationship is its own challenge. The whole system operates on assumptions. It assumes you're married or that the father will cooperate. It assumes you speak Japanese well enough to navigate ward offices and family courts. It assumes you have family support, financial stability, and knowledge of your legal rights. It assumes you understand Koseki registration, visa categories, and citizenship deadlines. When those assumptions hold, the system works reasonably well. When they don't, you're navigating a legal structure that wasn't designed for your situation and doesn't bend easily to accommodate it. Every foreign woman who gets pregnant by a Japanese man faces a version of this calculation. Some have supportive partners, stable relationships, and clear paths forward. Others face situations where the legal system's gaps become traps. The difference isn't usually about the quality of the relationship at the start. It's about what happens when circumstances change, when promises aren't kept, when someone decides to stop cooperating. That's when you discover whether the legal foundation under your family is solid, or if you've been building on assumptions that can collapse the moment someone changes their mind. You can't predict which situation you'll end up in. You can only understand what the possibilities are before you're in a position where understanding comes too late to help. Nobody tells you this part before you fall in love, before you move to Japan with dreams of building a life, before you see those 2 lines on a pregnancy test and realize you're about to navigate a legal system that was never designed for you. The Japanese family law framework isn't broken. It works exactly as intended for the people it was built to serve. You're just not one of them. Every choice you make from the moment you find out you're pregnant carries legal weight you can't undo later, whether the father signs that 1-page form before birth or after, whether you marry or stay unmarried, whether you document everything or trust that things will work out. These aren't romantic decisions, they're architectural ones. You're building the legal foundation for your child's entire existence, and the material you're working with is Japanese civil law, Koseki registration requirements, and the voluntary cooperation of someone who has complete discretion over your child's citizenship status. Some women navigate this successfully. They have partners who understand the stakes, relationships stable enough to weather bureaucracy, and enough knowledge to avoid the deadlines that can erase citizenship retroactively. Others find themselves sitting in family court 3 years later wondering how they ended up fighting for visitation rights to a child they carried, delivered and raised alone, while the father who refused to sign a form before birth now has legal standing they'll never have. The difference between those outcomes isn't virtue or preparation, it's luck. The luck of choosing a partner who remains cooperative, the luck of discovering the requirements before missing critical deadlines, the luck of having stable employment, proper visa status, and enough Japanese language ability to navigate systems that don't come with English instructions. This is the reality that doesn't make it into the romance of international relationships. The moment where love intersects with immigration law, family registration systems, and nationality requirements that treat your child's citizenship as something that needs to be claimed within specific time windows or lost forever. Where being foreign isn't just a cultural difference, it's a legal classification that determines whether you're documented as part of your own family or mentioned in the footnotes. The system won't change to accommodate you. It doesn't need to. It serves the population it was designed for efficiently enough that your edge case doesn't register as a systemic problem. You're just one foreign woman in a country of 125 million people trying to secure legal status for a child whose Japanese father may or may not decide to acknowledge their existence before the window closes. That's what nobody warns you about. Not the difficulty, but the precariousness. The way your entire future can depend on someone else's signature on a form you didn't know existed until it was almost too late to matter. Almost too late to matter. Almost too late to matter. Almost too